1940. The horrific effects of the Nazi Party's rapid rise to power had become evident, with millions of Jewish people persecuted and forced into horrendous concentration camps. In the United States, the government did little to save the Jewish people. Appalled at this lack of intervention, one American man, Varian stepped in at the expense of his own job and comfort to take a stand against the Nazis for the freedoms and inalienable rights of the oppressed Jewish people. Varian was born on October 15, 1907, to Lillian and Arthur Fry in New York. He grew up in a Protestant family in a time when Europe was ravaged by World War I. Even as a child, Fry was heavily interested in international affairs and helping those affected by foreign relations. At age 9, he participated in fundraisers to help the American Red Cross provide supplies to civilians affected by the Great War. Later on, while attending Harvard University, he took an interest in literature and founded the Hound and Horn Literature Quarterly, signifying the start of his reporting career. He became very successful with his journalism, getting many of his works published and distributed. In 1935, after traveling to Berlin for a routine work trip, Fry was horrified by the atrocities he saw committed by the Nazis against the innocent Jewish people. Unfortunately, back in the United States, rising anti-Semitism meant that the government did not see Nazi aggression against the Jewish people as a pressing issue and even turned away from accepting many Jewish refugees. However, Fry's visit made it clear to him that he needed to take a stand for the rights of the Jewish people. As he said, "I could not remain idle as long as I had any chances at all of saving even a few of the Nazis' intended victims." 5 years later, Fry finally received his chance to personally assist refugees as the Nazi invasion of France alarmed the United States and led to them agreeing to grant a limited number of visas for Jewish refugees. As a founding member of the Emergency Rescue Committee, commonly known as the ERC, Varian was elected to go to Marseille, France, as a representative of the committee to save certain refugees. Although he initially planned to assist in this relief effort for only 1 month, and was given permission to save only a handful of selected prominent Jewish artists and intellectuals, he soon realized that he couldn't abandon the rest of the suffering Jewish people.
The vast majority of the people would try to just continue to have their life the way it was and not take any risks. And if they saw something, they probably would try to ignore it. But the number of people who actually helped people, like hiding them or getting them across borders or giving them false papers or food, was very few.
Varian was one of these few, willing to risk his own life for people in a different country without receiving any compensation. Thus, he took a stand against the inactivity of the American government and illegally extended his stay in France, and ultimately ended up running his own rescue network in France for 13 months before he was forced out of the country in September 1941. Fry used the ERC as a cover for his own high-risk operation that used forged documents, illegal funding, and secret routes to bring Jewish refugees into countries safe from Nazi influence. As his network expanded, Fry added more members to help his operation, some of whom were even inspired by Fry's efforts and went on to begin their own rescue networks. From France, refugees either had to make the dangerous trek across the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain or went on the sea route to Portugal, where they boarded ships to countries out of Nazi control. Varian took a stand for the refugees' freedoms and was able to save over 4,000 people, including famous intellectuals of the time, such as Nobel Prize winner Otto Meyerhoff, writer Heinrich Mann, and artist Marc Chagall. During this time, Fry remained steadfast in his resolve to take a stand for the rights of all those that he could, even while enduring constant interrogation by the Vichy French government and American officials who disapproved of his deep involvement in foreign affairs. The French government objected to Fry's blatant disregard for their regulations and ignored his attempts to explain the true horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. Despite these hardships, Fry continued to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves, helping thousands of Jewish refugees escape the clutches of the brutal Nazis. In August of 1941, Fry's passport was confiscated, and he was given a warning of his potential arrest if he continued his illegal rescue network. Fry knew that he could not abandon the Jewish people, as he was one of the only Americans at the time that was not only fully aware of the horrors of the Holocaust, but was also willing to risk his own life to stand up for the rights of the Jewish people. For many, he was the only source of hope that they had left. Shortly after his refusal to stop standing up for the safety and freedoms of the victims, Fry was arrested and sent back to the United States. Although his return to America was accompanied with the loss of his job, he knew his fight for the Jewish people could not end with his rescue network. Unlike other individuals who saved Jewish people during the Holocaust, Fry continued his mission of taking a stand for the inherent freedoms of these persecuted peoples even after his arrest. He began to write novels and newspaper articles and started traveling around the United States, giving lectures about the ERC and what he had witnessed in France, in hopes of garnering support for the Jewish people and inspiring others to start rescue networks for those fleeing Nazi rule. By 1963, although the Holocaust had come to an end, Varian Fry's support for the Jewish people had not. Having bore witness to the horrid conditions the Jewish people had been subjugated to, Fry knew that these people had to be remembered. He worked with the International Rescue Committee and some of the artists he had rescued to create works for charities in remembrance of the Holocaust. On September 13, 1967, the man responsible for saving countless lives passed away. As details about his heroism during the war emerged, he received a variety of honors, including the Legion of Honor from France, the Eisenhower Liberation Medal from the United States, and even became the first American listed as righteous among the nations at the National Holocaust Memorial in Israel. Many years afterward, his work was publicly recognized by Warren Christopher, United States Secretary of State.
In the case of Varian Fry, we've got a lot to make up for. During his lifetime, his heroic actions never received the support that they deserved from the United States government, and unfortunately that included the State Department. Even today, Varian Fry's great story of courage and compassion is too little known here in the United States.
Despite these awards, much of the public remained unaware of his brave endeavors because the government didn't want to broadcast his actions of rebellion. Additionally, the secrecy surrounding his mission led to the information about the network being destroyed or hidden. In a time when the American government and public preferred to turn a blind eye to the evident suffering of the Jewish people, Varian Fry took a stand for their freedoms, a move that cost him his job and brought the suspicion of the government upon him. For 13 months, despite facing constant opposition from the US and French governments, Varian Fry toiled non-stop to run his own rescue network, saving over 4,000 people from the clutches of the Nazis, some of whom were greatly influential in shaping worldwide culture. His nationwide tours discussing his experiences in France served as an inspiration to others to take a stand. Fry risked not only his career, but his life to stand up for what he knew was right, no matter how many people refused to see the suffering in front of them. In a time when the U.S. government and much of the American public preferred to turn a blind eye to the evident suffering of the Jewish people, Varian Fry took a stand for their freedoms, a move that cost him his job and brought the suspicion of the government upon him. For 13 months, despite facing constant opposition from the American and French governments, Varian Fry toiled non-stop to run his own rescue network, saving over 4,000 people from the clutches of the Nazis, some of whom were greatly influential in shaping worldwide culture. His tours around the country discussing his experiences in France served as an inspiration to others to take a stand no matter the obstacles that stood in their way. Fry risked not only his career, but his life. Rapid rise to power had become evident, with millions of Jewish people persecuted and forced into horrendous concentration camps. In the United States, the government did little to save the Jewish people suffering at the hands of the Nazis. Appalled at this lack of intervention, one American man stepped up in the expense of his own job and comfort to take a stand against the Nazis for the freedoms and inalienable rights of the oppressed Jewish people.